Welcome back, everybody, to another not a late night show, but Ask Dr. Kojo segment. I was not able to do the late night show last night. Got caught up, and then by the time the NFL draft started, I was all over the place. I decided that I want to keep, I want to stay consistent, and we had this new segment called Ask Dr. Kojo. I haven't really like officially announced it, but I did do like a Q&A where I was like, y'all just come on here and let's just vibe and hang out and ask me a couple of questions. And that's what we are going to do today. So I'm excited to do that. So once again, my name is Kojo. I'm checking in from sunny Los Angeles, California. You all let me know where you all are checking in from, and let's go ahead and get it. Get to the comments. Hey Sarah, how you doing? Drew, how you doing? Mississippi in the house, how you doing? He do the dance. Leilani, what's going on? From Tennessee, checking in. My favorite person, Lauren. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Let me see where people are checking in from. LA, from Florida, people from Arkansas, right? Little Rock is in Arkansas. Prescott, AZ, Michigan, Ohio. Okay. Oh yeah, we got the sweatbands on today. We got the Penny Hardaway. This is a throwback jersey. One of my favorite players. Practically he was Kobe before Kobe was Kobe, if that makes sense. One of my favorite players. But yeah, let me go ahead and answer some questions. If you all ask a question and I don't get to it, feel free to ask it as I'm like ending one question, so that way I can get to all your questions. Let's see what we have today. So the first question that I see comes from Carolina Osoria Villasenor. It's a beautiful name. I like the fact that you have your whole name out there. Respect. Is it possible to have ADHD, anxiety, and depression? Really good question. I do think it is possible. I know it's possible to have all three. And I tell people all the time that it's very rare that you have somebody who has just ADHD, well, not very rare, but at least I want to be careful with the words I choose. But in my experience, when I see a patient with ADHD, I almost always, at least from what I've seen, I almost always see them to have at least something else, like anxiety, depression, eating disorder. So that's what I've seen, and I talk about, my own personal struggle with ADHD, and I've only been diagnosed with ADHD, but I'm pretty sure that, living in LA, I'm so much more anxious than I've ever been. So I definitely do believe that I struggle with anxiety as well. Valerie says, hey, my question is, will I live with ADHD for the rest of my life? Good question. So here's the thing. A lot of times people with ADHD, so people say things like, oh, you're going to outgrow the ADHD. But from what I've seen, the majority of people actually, you don't outgrow it. And the symptoms that do fade away, at least, from what I've seen, and also from what I've also like observed in the literature, the symptoms that fade away are the ones that are like the hyperactive symptoms, right? But people who struggle with the inattentive, form of ADHD, a lot of times those symptoms kind of persist into adulthood. Disorganization, struggle with time management, being spaced out. Those things tend to kind of like persist and really frustrate you as an adult. So it's important to bring awareness to that. Great questions. Let me see. How are you coming in from? Julie, I'm doing good. How are you doing? You're coming in from Kansas. All right. I have a question that I posted. Can adults develop ADHD, or is it always something missed from childhood? So, Julie, you're asking the great questions. So, Julie, thank you for this question. To my knowledge, this whole idea of adult onset ADHD, it's not something that I particularly believe in right now. Ask me this in 5 years, maybe the answer is different. But from, I always do my best to give you all evidence-based information. And from what I've seen from the evidence and from the information that I've gotten from my OGs, right, the psychiatrists and the nurse practitioners and the nurses who like helped me when I was in school, like I don't believe that there's a thing as ADHD that pops up, in your adulthood. But we're still looking into it, and like I said, my answer could be different in a couple of years. But with ADHD, like we know there's a genetic link to it. We do know that we're looking at traumatic brain injury, premature birth. We're looking at all kinds of different possible explanations for why somebody would have ADHD. And the research is still going on. But to answer your question, I would say that when, let's say you're 27 and you're diagnosed with ADHD, my belief at this time is that you more than likely had it as a child, right? And it's something that was missed. The signs and symptoms of ADHD should pop up before the age of 12, and you should see it in two different environments, right? Like you should see it like at school and like also at home, and also maybe like at church, but at least in two different environments. Really, really good question. Really good question. Do you think where can I get adult for adult autism? So Claudia, this is where with autism, there's a lot of people within psychiatry that don't fully understand it. So it'd be tough for like your primary care to maybe understand the neurodivergent side of you. So this is where I would definitely try and get like a mental health specialist. I'm talking about like a psychiatrist, psychologist, a psych nurse practitioner, or a psych PA. But that specialized training is going to be important here. Do you think TBIs could contribute? Greg, yeah, I definitely do think that there's like a link between TBIs and ADHD, and that's one of the things that right now I'm personally looking at into more, and I have like a daily report that I read off of every day, right? I look at the videos I'm going to post, and the funny videos, the educational one, the comedy, like I have all that organized on my daily report, and I have a section on there called the reading list, and I'm actually reading right now and trying to learn more about this right here. Really good question. Really good question. How crucial is DBT for someone who is suffering with borderline personality disorder? Well, Austin, if you ask me, I think that it's extremely important. This is the mainstay treatment for borderline personality disorder. And a lot of times people confuse borderline with bipolar, but one difference between the two is that with bipolar, you use mood stabilizers, and borderline, we do use meds a lot, but DBT right here, what you have on the screen, that's the treatment. Like that's how you treat DBT. That's what we're taught in school, and that's what we did at the hospital. So I think it's extremely crucial, and also for people with BPD to also be able to have a relationship with somebody who has a good relationship with themselves. That could be very helpful, because sometimes, at least in my experience, like people with borderline personality disorder, I've seen them do this thing where they mirror, or like it's like you take on the personality of the person that you're hanging out with, and I've seen that a lot. So if you're taking on traits of somebody who has a good relationship with themselves, maybe we can trick you. Well, not trick, but maybe we can convince you to believe in yourself more, convince you to believe that you can manage your emotions more, that you can be in control of your thoughts and your feelings. Like it's going to be hard, right? Because you have borderline, or it's going to be harder, but you can still do it because you see somebody else, they have that healthy relationship within themselves. So I think that's important to mention. Sandra says, how do I get past being burnt out with life and ADHD? I've been on antidepressants and Vyvanse for about 10 years and became legally blind during this time. Sandra, very sorry to hear that. I just don't know how to get it together anymore. What can I do? So Sandra, here's the first thing that I want to talk about. This is like a loaded question. How do I get past being burnt out with life and ADHD, right? So when you're burnt out, it can come from a lot of things, right? Mental illness. It can come from having too much on your plate. But within that burnout, there's oftentimes like a lack of boundaries, right? And we all struggle with enforcing boundaries. And I think the therapy side of things, like antidepressants are cool. I love them. Vyvanse is cool. I love Vyvanse, right? It's amazing. But we have to account for like therapy, or like coaching, or having like that interaction verbally with a provider, even if it's like brief supportive psychotherapy, right? Like you go to see your psychiatrist and like you get a refill on your meds, and then you have like 10 minutes to talk, and then they're encouraging you, talking about coping skills. Like that last 10 minutes is very important. It's very important, because there you can talk about ways to stand up for yourself. Maybe you can cut out a couple of things, because you might be putting too much on your plate, Sandra. You might be doing this here and doing that and doing this. Maybe you can drop a few commitments and learn how to be, nicer to yourself. You're already doing a good job, right? And like you say, you became legally blind during this time. So you've had a lot happening to you. So when you say you want to get it together, you have to understand that you're a different person. Like, there's a new Sandra here, and trying to judge yourself based off of the old version of you could be pretty frustrating, right? So give yourself some grace, and you're doing a good job. I bit my tongue. I hate that. Uh, I'm no medical professional, but it can be misdiagnosed. Adult autism and ADHD present similarly. Um, I get Jill. I guess I think you have people who can have both, right? But there is like a difference between autism and ADHD. With autism, like you can have autism, but you might not have any issue regulating your attention. But you could also have ADHD as well. So, love Vyvanse, just way too expensive. Don, you're right. I mean, I don't have an answer for this one. Vyvanse just happens to cost a lot of money if the insurance is not picking up. It's tough, but it's a very effective medication. List dexamphetamine. That's the name for it. But yeah, my patients love it, so that's cool. That's cool. Claudia, no problem. I'm doing my best to get to all these questions. I want to get to them. How can I help my 8-year-old boy with ADHD be less defiant? All right, so Carolina, 8-year-old is a third grader. Okay, so a third grader. I think a third grader knows right from wrong, believe it or not. Sometimes you have kids who are super smart, and like they'll be like when I was in third grade, I would be like, oh no, I'm just a kid, I don't know, but like I knew exactly what was going on, right? So a third grader is smart, very very smart kid. So you can't let your child run circles around you, right? And sometimes, look, when I was a kid, I try to do it to my mom, right? And if I was a kid again, I'd probably do it. But having boundaries for your child, like letting them know, all right, we gotta wake up at this time, right? You come back from school, you got soccer practice. We have to do these things. Now, if you struggle with whatever, that's fine. At least do it, and then let's struggle. And then I see where you can struggle. I see where you're struggling at, and we can come and help you. But you have to let that child know, hey, you have to get your stuff done, right? Like that's like if you don't do your homework, you fail. Like there's natural consequences to things, and I think it's important to teach kids that. So like do that. It's gonna be trial and error that you see where your child is struggling at, and then say, hey, can I come in here and help you out? Like, can I come in there? Like, how can we bring this together? So they're probably gonna need help. Especially with the ADHD, but we have to let them know, like your child, you gotta get the work done. Like kids don't make the rules around here. I'm big on that. Like I don't think kids should be, telling parents what to do. That's just how it is, right? So let your child know he or she, 8-year-old boy, let him know that he has to get his work done. If he doesn't get it done on time, we can come out and help him out. Maybe if he's having a hard time with, taking instructions from people, you can say, hey, how would you like me to talk to you? Like, is there a better way that we can do this? And then maybe let the teacher know. So when he goes to school, he doesn't get in trouble because he doesn't like when people like raise their voice at him, right? Or like you startle him, or whatever the case may be. But I think you can definitely meet that third grader halfway. Hey, dude. Hey, how you doing? Any tips for ADHD and sex? I get so distracted that I legit don't feel anything if I'm not focusing on it. All right, so you say you don't feel anything. Okay, respect. I respect how you feel. I think this is where like if you're struggling with this, there's two people that I think it'll be helpful to have a conversation with. The first person, your partner, letting them know like what's going on. Like if you haven't had that ADHD conversation, saying, hey, I struggle with so and so. So like when we're doing the Mickey Ficky, like it's not I'm not into you, but like I'm this is something that I've noticed about myself, right? So that way they're understanding and they're not making you feel bad for how you are. And on the back end, having that conversation with your provider, letting them know if they can work through some coping skills or like ways to keep you like present and in the moment and not being so spaced out, that could be helpful. Maybe it's a change in medications, adjustment in meds, going up, going down, something like that. But having a conversation with those two people, your partner and your provider, that's going to help release some of the anxiety that you have, right? Because you're feeling frustrated that like it's kind of embarrassing to like when you think of sex, like you think of it as like enjoyable, like you would want to do that. So you have to be kind to yourself. Most definitely be kind to yourself and don't judge yourself for any perks that you think you may or may not have. All right. I really struggle with being on time. What can I do? I'm always late for work, and I think people are getting offended. So, Lena, I have an old trick that I like to do. I still do it to this day. My car, I'll put the time. Like right now in California, it's 4:07 p.m. Why did I? Like you should like part of your tongue, and like you can feel it. It's 4:08 p.m. in California right now, right? So like in my car, it'll probably be like 4:25, like 15 minutes ahead. So if I have to get somewhere at 5:30, and I hop in my car and it's saying like it's 5:07, I'm like, oh shoot, I gotta make it. And then like according to the car, I have to get somewhere at 5:30, and I get there at like 5:37 because I'm always late. But I'm 15 minutes ahead, so I'm really there at 5:22. Like you trick yourself because you know that you're late for things. So that's like a little trick that I use and I've told people before, and it's been very helpful. So I love that trick. But also, communication, letting people know, hey, like I do struggle with punctuality. Keep me accountable. Like I don't want any type of sympathy. Like don't cry for me. Like like I'm good. I'm letting you know I struggle with this. I'm just giving you a heads up, and then I'm gonna make the deadline. But I'm just letting you know how I am. But don't feel bad for me. I don't need you to be like, oh, no, I got it. Just give me time, and I'm gonna work on this part, right? So be easy on yourself. All right, and I'm trying to get to as many questions as possible. Please try not to spam, but I'm trying to get to as many questions as possible. And can BPD be misdiagnosed as bipolar in early teens? For sure. I think humans are humans, so you can have somebody misdiagnosed BPD and bipolar. And I think that a mental least should not get these two confused, because with one of these two conditions, there's a manic episode, or at least a hypomanic episode. So mania looks a certain way, and you should be able to tell mania. Like anybody who is like me, you should be able to tell the difference between mania and affective instability, right? Which is like your mood going up and down. You see that in borderline. So a professional should not miss this. But we're humans, right? So we could miss this, Serena. I set my car clock ahead too. Fantastic idea. I love that. And y'all, just give you a heads up. My team is the Titans. I'm gonna ask y'all for like a slight favor here. My team is the Tennessee Titans. That's my favorite football team. And the NFL draft is going on right now. So y'all keep me posted about who the Titans pick with our first pick in the second round, right? So if y'all are sports fans, somebody like chime in and let me know if we pick a player or something like that, because I want to know. So maybe I'll get my reaction on live. Let me go ahead and answer some of these questions. My partner has ADHD and autism, and I have bipolar disorder, ADHD, and clinical depression, anxiety. How do we keep ourselves on track for day-to-day life and minimize clashes? So, Sad Potato, believe it or not, when you say clashes, I don't think the clashes are a bad thing, right? If you're having the clash with your partner, it means that you see things one way and they see things one way, and it's an issue. I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Because when you have these clashes, it gives you a chance to communicate with your partner. So don't think of a confrontation as a bad thing, but look at it as an opportunity for growth, right? But make sure that y'all are coming, he or she is like coming to you with respect. That's the thing. Like, difficult conversations have to be had. We have to talk about these things, but don't, call me out of my name. Don't raise your voice at me. No putting hands on nobody. Like, keep it respectful. So there's nothing wrong with these clashes, but have the conversation, but then try and figure out, like, why did that clash come about? Were you super late and your partner had stayed up all day, so they were counting on you? Like, there's a reason why y'all had a fight. So do your best to get to the bottom of each fight, and after y'all have like a clash, right? With each clash, at least come to like some sort of a resolution or some sort of a solution. Even if the solution sucks, have something so you can try that and at least let that fail. Because a lot of times you have a clash with somebody, right? Or you have an argument, and then after that you'll be like, all right, cool. You go right, you go left. You come back around the next day, y'all argue over the same thing because you didn't put the issue to rest, right? So do your best to solve issues as they come. And don't be so, afraid of the clashes. I think it's a good thing to communicate, right? So don't be afraid of the clashes. Let me see. There's some good questions right here. DBT. All right, so DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, is a form of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? And it's aimed at helping you manage your mood, right? And it's aimed at helping you improve when it comes to interpersonal relationships, right? So with borderline personality disorder, you're going to have a lot of times you're going to see individuals who have a difficult time with personal relationships, right? Your relationship with your mother, your relationship with your dad, your relationship with your siblings, your relationship, your intimate relationship, right, with your partner, romantically, sexually. So sometimes that back and forth, feeling like they're gonna abandon you and feeling like you're on a roller coaster. That's a term that I hear a lot. It can be pretty difficult to deal with. So DBT has helped at helping you to manage your mood and regulate yourself because you can't control the other person. That's his thing. If like you feel like somebody's gonna abandon you, damn, maybe they might. I don't know. Like I'm not here to lie to y'all. I'm not here to. That's the worst thing to do. Like I'm not here to lie or tell you any whichever way. Like they may or may not abandon you, but regardless of what they do, let's prepare ourselves for success, right? We hope that people say our lives, but we're not going to beg anybody to stay around, right? Like we carry ourselves with respect around here, So we're not going to beg, And if you've done it before, that's fine. We've all made mistakes, but moving forward, we're not going to beg. We're not going to try and manipulate people. Like, hey, if you want to be in my life, go ahead and be in my life. Come and go, whatever. But like, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be fine. So as you manage your mood and you improve, like you're going to let yourself, like you don't have to worry about people's opinions. You don't have to worry about, like, you're going to be fine regardless. And I think DBT helps to give people like a sense of peace, especially when like you feel like you've had all this turmoil inside you for a long time. Get some more questions. I love this Q&A thing. I'm sad I missed the show last night, but I love the Q&A thing. I think it's super cool. What are some tips to help manage ADD and manic depression for middle-aged women? It's a very specific question. What are some tips to manage ADD and manic depression for middle-aged women? All right, so let's break them down, right? The first one, ADD or ADHD, middle-aged women, right? So what's middle age? I mean, what do you all consider to be middle age right now? I don't. 36. I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm gonna pick an age, and the ladies are gonna be like, nah, don't guess my age. Don't say I'm old. But either way, 80 and middle aged women, regardless of however old you are, you might be dealing with aging parents. You might be dealing with kids that are getting older and or leaving the house. You're dealing with your work, right? You're dealing with your spouse. So just off of those four things, life is difficult, right? And you have the relationship with yourself. Like you still have to pursue things, and a lot of times you get lost in motherhood or by being a wife or whatever. You forget to do for yourself, right? And ADHD doesn't make it any easier because you're behind, you're overwhelmed. So I think just taking some time to take a break and not being too hard on yourself is going to go a long way. Understand that you're only one person, right? You might have 4 kids, but you can't help each child at the same time. Like you do things as they come, so give yourself some space and understand that you're doing a better job than you're probably giving yourself credit for. And when it comes to, because with ADHD, self-esteem is so important, right? How you feel about yourself is so important. So I don't want you all getting overwhelmed and then you have a rough morning and then your day's over at 11 o'clock, right? Like mentally, no, like you have a rough morning, but like, damn, we're going to push through it and have a better rest of the day. And manic depression, so I'm assuming you're saying bipolar disorder, right? So, once again, you can't be too hard on yourself. Don't, like, understand that you have a mental health condition. And because of that, sometimes you're depressed. So when you're depressed and you're not as productive, don't be too hard on yourself, right? If you're depressed and your room is dirty, I made that video recently. Clean one part of the room, it's all good, right? And I've had some patients with, bipolar disorder, and they'll tell me that whenever they get manic, like they enjoy the mania more than the depression, because they're so much more productive. So don't judge yourself for the lack of productivity, like when you're depressed. And likewise, when you're manic, sometimes you might get so manic, you might clean your whole room, you might clean your whole house, you might clean the kitchen, you might do everything that you've been wanting to do for the past 2 weeks, like all at once, and that's good. Like you've been productive, that's fine. But we worry about safety with mania. So like even if you do get manic or have a manic, like the number one thing I say with that is, of course, professional help. But the sooner you can get back to a regular sleep schedule, the better for you, right? So if you've been up doing whatever, that's fine. But please, let's get some sleep. Whether you have to go to your psych and you get medication to help you sleep or whatever, try and get some sleep and just slow down just a little bit. Just slow down just a little. If you can just slow down a little bit, you can make a lot of progress, right? So of course, we don't want mania to extend for too long to where you're in the hospital. But those are some tips that I would give. Really good question, Sam. Really good question. Vince says, I love your page. Vince Carter? Is this Vince Carter? Did you play basketball? Vince Carter. I love your page. It helps me with my ADHD and my relationship. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm constantly refreshing because I want to see who the Titans are picking in the second round, if we're on the clock or not. Let me get to some of these questions. How does a woman get help for ADHD in her 30s? Many providers push us aside and won't listen when we talk. Sabrina, this might be where you need sometimes the answer is you need a new doctor. Like, you need somebody who will listen. And within the medical community, there are professionals who do not fully understand ADHD. And when I say you don't fully understand it, it means that you don't understand that the lack of care. Like, Sabrina, you can be sitting there. Let's say you're 20 or your 30s. Let's say you're 34, right? You can be sitting there and you're struggling, you're overwhelmed at work, life, school. Your relationship is going south. You're losing money because you're not efficient with anything. And some providers don't understand that. But some providers are like, oh, ADHD is a priority. It's the most treatable mental health condition that we have. And the failure to treat it is like an absolute tragedy. Like, you're stripping somebody of their quality of life. And then you want to book an appointment with those providers who get it, right? Because they're going to actually get you in and, figure out, is it actually ADHD or is it something else? And if it is ADHD, this is what we do for it. And, when you get treatment for ADHD, sometimes your quality of life significantly improves. And that's why I talk about it so much, because, we've all been collectively struggling since the pandemic. So if I told people that I was like, hey, if I'm cool with Sabrina, I'm like, hey, check it out. I got something for you. Try this. Or go talk to this person, and they're going to do something for you that's going to significantly increase the quality of your life. I would argue that 10 out of 10 people would do that. If you believe me, I'm like, hey, check it out. Like, go get help for that, and you'll be able to get your stuff done. Before 1 p.m. You're not staying up to 11 to do it. You're not going to be overwhelmed. Your quality of life is going to improve. Your relationship is going to get better. Who wouldn't sign up for that, right? So that's why I always encourage people to get help. And sometimes the answer is you do have to switch over providers. Like, you're just not with somebody who has the same concerns as you, or for whatever reason they're just not comfortable making that diagnosis. I don't fully understand why why people don't listen, right? Like, if that's your job, that's your job, right? At least for the 8 to 12 hours that you're seeing patients, that's your job. Just do your job. And then after that, do whatever. But the majority of people that I know, the majority of my friends who are clinicians, they're very good. They're people that I would send my family members to. So I do have hope that there's that there's people out there who can help you out. Leilani says, toxic PCPs are the worst and being Mickey Ficky. So happy to about therapists kind of well or serving referred me to mental health clinic. I just wish I could have kept. Yeah. And nobody talks about when you find a cool therapist and you have to leave them, or you find another therapist. It's almost like having to leave a cool therapist is breaking up, or at least for me, it's breaking up with a girl that you really like. You're like, why do we break up? They were really cool. I wish we could have kept dating, right? And I think with therapists, I think it's even sadder with therapists. Maybe you can find another cool girl, but to find somebody you're comfortable and vulnerable with on the level of a therapist, it can be quite difficult. So sometimes you're like, damn, I wish I could be with that therapist because they get me, and I don't have to tell a brand new person my trauma all over again, right? Are there any keywords to search for Brian when searching for diagnosis in later years, 30s, 40s? Thank you. Ooh. Oh, Emily, this is a good question. Oh my gosh, it's a good question. Any keywords to search for a provider searching for a diagnosis in later years, 30s and 40s? I'm trying to twist my hair. My hair's getting long. Wow, keywords. So normally, Emily, what I tell people to do is if you have a PCP, you can go to them and they may be able to refer you. If you don't have any PCP or you want to go straight to a specialist, like I would, this is what I do, Emily. Like I'll just type in like Google search, type in psychiatrist near me. I'm not sure what your Google search bar is gonna like default to when you type that in, but psychiatrist near me, boom. And it'll take you to like maybe Psychology Today or like a list of providers, right? I'm talking about psychiatrists, psychiatric nurse practitioners, psychiatric PAs, who can all prescribe medications and diagnose you, and also psychologists and social workers who will help out with therapy. So that's probably what I would say. Honestly, like if like we were friends here in LA and you asked me and we're hanging out, I'll say, Emily, Google psychiatrist near me and then look for the providers in the LA area or wherever you're at, and then to go from there. And sometimes you may have to like go from one person to the next, and sometimes you call their office and people will say, oh, we don't treat ADHD here, or we don't do blah blah blah. And for me, that's just I'm just gonna tell you all the truth. I'm like, I don't get it. Like if I call a mental health clinic, I'm like, it's a mental health clinic. Yeah, like y'all treat ADHD, anxiety, depression, eating disorder. Like, isn't that what you all do? But then there's certain clinics who specialize in certain things. So I get that, right? If they specialize in eating disorders, you go there, like you can expect the clinicians there to have specialized training with eating disorders, and they do that type of thing. But if it's like a general mental health clinic and they say we serve everybody, sometimes I get confused by they're like, oh no, we don't see those types of patients. I'm like, what do you mean we don't see those types of patients? Oh my gosh. I was prescribed Zoloft this morning for anxiety. What can I expect when starting this medication? Doctor didn't go into a lot of detail. So Ashlyn, great question. I'd love to answer it. And I think on behalf of all of the mental health provider specialists, I do want to apologize because sometimes, not that your doctor sucks. I'm pretty sure you can have a good doctor, but sometimes we get so busy, and I always try to tell myself, Kodo, slow down, focus on this patient, Ashlyn Zurich. Like if you're my patient, I'm like, all right, Kodo, focus on this patient, and then we'll get to the other 7. But focus. Sometimes if I'm going through the motions, I'll say, boom, here's Zoloft 50 or Zoloft 25 milligrams. Take it, boom, 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 whatever. Have a good day. Because I'm in a hurry, but I don't want to do that because like the patient should know, right? But Zoloft for anxiety, it's a good question. I don't get too many medical questions nowadays, since I've been doing this social media content. But either way, Zoloft is an antidepressant, right? So it's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And normally, like when I'm giving Zoloft to a patient, I'll tell them, hey, this is an antidepressant. It's a really good antidepressant. It's one of the safest ones that we have. And the patients that I would have like cardiac issues, I would always love to give Zoloft because I'm like, oh, this is a very heart-friendly medication. And I'll always tell them, like, when you start this medication, it is an antidepressant. So if you see that your sex drive is like much lower, like let us know, because sometimes you see that with Zoloft. That's a Prozac antidepressant. So I'll just let them know, hey, watch out for this. I'll let them know that sometimes you might have some stomach, your stomach might be upset. The first couple of days, first couple of weeks. And then probably the most important thing that I tell them is that, give this medication like 3 to 6 weeks to work. Because sometimes, and also because I see a lot of patients with ADHD. If I'm treating ADHD and I prescribe a stimulant, I expect that medication to work like that. I need that to work same day, first week, you should see a difference. With an antidepressant like Zoloft, you may have to wait a little bit longer, right? You may have to wait like a month before you see something. So I'm like, hey, check it out. Like it might take you a month to really feel the effects of this medication, but please don't give up. Like stick with me, like give it some time. If it doesn't work after like 2 months or whatever, then maybe it's not gonna work and we can switch it to something else. But it takes some time to work. But when it works, it's been very helpful. Zoloft is one of my favorite medications to prescribe. And yeah. And see, this took me like what, 2 minutes to explain to you. But sometimes, like, you get into the doctor's office and we're just running, and then, I'm thinking about who my team is going to draft or whatever. But hopefully that answers your question. Answers the question. Annette, so this is probably a long shot, so let me answer this question for you. And I also saw Tennessee State in there. I was like, ooh, Tennessee State. Oh, we took a corner. Oh my gosh. Why did we take a corner? Oh, the Titans. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Why did we take it? We needed a quarterback. We needed the quarterback. And then I'm so sorry. I got sidetracked. We needed a quarterback. We took a corner. Mickey, Ficky. Hi, Dakota. This is probably a long shot, and I'm not sure you'll see this. Well, I see it. However, I'm finishing my psychology degree through East Tennessee State University and was wondering if you had any advice for someone going into your field with a focus on trauma and resilience who has a past history of trauma themselves. I currently work for a mental health private practice and attend therapy myself, but it's been hard getting anyone to answer that question my heart and passion lie with. So, Annette, I don't see the second part of this question, but you want to go into like this field, right? Mental health, psychology, psychiatry, but you're worried about your own past history of trauma. So I definitely do think that you can be a fantastic mental health specialist, even with a long history of trauma. And sometimes your trauma might be the thing that helps you connect with people better, right? So you could really, really be a fantastic therapist because of your own past experiences. I think that's the beautiful thing about it. And you don't have to let your patients know whatever happened to you, but it's easy for you to come from a place of empathy because like you know what it feels like to be there. So keep that in mind. The second thing I will say is, like, as you talk to certain patients, sometimes certain things that you hear or things that you be exposed to will it may trigger certain memories, and it can make it very difficult for you to just exist in this space. And there's no way that you can be helpful to somebody else if you're not taking care of yourself. So I would say definitely pursue it, because I'm a go-getter. Like the answer is always yes for me. Like I'm going to do it. But if you have access to professional services, I would definitely say see a therapist as you become a therapist, if that makes sense. That way you can make sure that you're not you're moving at a pace that's comfortable for you. Maybe this is the field for you, but you don't want to go so fast. It takes a while to deal with trauma, right? Like sometimes a traumatic event can happen to you like that, and it takes years to deal with it. And sometimes you never get over it, right? So take your time. Like Lonnie, I'm like, why did we pick a corner? We needed the quarterback. We needed the quarterback. Come on, Titans. We needed the quarterback. What's going on? I'll answer a couple more questions before the water break. Have you ever had someone that's on the verge of hurting people, including themselves? What do you do? Ooh, this is a good question. That's a good question right here. Someone who's on the verge of hurting people, including themselves, what do you do about that, right? So, never talked about this on social media, and hopefully it's okay with the platformers. But if you have somebody who is wanting to hurt other people, right? That's an emergent situation. So if they have any type of intent, whether it's just to hurt somebody, in a non-lethal way or in a lethal way, you still want to address that as soon as possible. So that type of person, you'd want to, of course, don't judge them, but try and get them the most urgent psychiatric, help, as possible. And if they have any thoughts of wanting to hurt themselves, is the same way. You want to get them, into a ER or urgent care, and then we go through triage, and sometimes people might say that they have thoughts of hurting themselves, but they didn't really mean it, or maybe they misspoke or something like that. Or sometimes people come and say, yeah, I have thoughts of hurting myself, and I got a plan, and I know how I'm going to do it, and there's levels to it, right? And based off of what is said to you, a good clinician will know how to approach the situation. And sometimes inpatient hospitalization is required, and sometimes it's not, right? But you want to get that person to a place where they can be worked up appropriately, because we would not want somebody to hurt themselves, and we wouldn't want somebody to hurt other people as well, right? So this is important. All right. What's going to help with body? Ooh, right here. Ooh, great question. And while I answer this question, let's go ahead and get your water. And you all drop that magic word in there. Drop that magic word in there. What's going to help with body dysmorphia? I think, professional help is that's the first answer that comes to mind. But there's some subtle things that can be helpful, like improving your relationship with your body over time, right? So if you're in the gym, yeah, sure, go work out. Don't push yourself too hard, but do go work out. But sometimes I think with social media, the people that we follow, it has an impact on us. Like, are you, like, if you're a girl, are you following, like Instagram models with BBLs? I'm not, no hate on those girls, right? I see the pages. I'm like, oh, she looks fine, and like look great. That's good. But if you're a lady and you feel like you're impressionable, is it healthy for you to be so exposed to all these women who look a million times better than you because they have all this work done, right? Nothing's wrong with getting work, but like you want to make sure that you're not exposing yourself to something that might be triggering you. Likewise, if you're a guy, right, and you're looking at all these big bodybuilders and they're the ones who are like driving the fast cars and they're the ones with the prettiest ladies or whatever it is, like be careful. You don't want to compare yourself to those types of guys. Maybe they have big arms and strong cows. Maybe your body's not like that, right? But you have a version of your body that you could grow into that you could really enjoy and love, right? So I would say that just be careful what you watch online, because sometimes it doesn't do you any good, and it just makes you think about like, wow, like I really, really, really want to, like push myself in the gym, or I want to stop, I don't eat as much because I need to look this way, right? So it's important to just be mindful of what you're exposing yourself to. All right, let me see. Anybody? Cheers, and go Titans, tighten up. I wish we picked the quarterback though. Cheers. Let's get this. The Titans should pick the quarterback. Make it 50. Cheers, y'all. Let me get one more question in here. Sorry. How can psychiatrists diagnose? All right, so I won't say psychiatrists and other providers in general. You can diagnose in one setting, right? But sometimes I think sometimes you can't get the answer in one setting. And I don't think I talk about that enough online. I'm happy that you mentioned this, Deborah, because sometimes you just don't know enough. Like, or sometimes like we'll have like, like rule out diagnoses or like a provision diagnosis, or sometimes you'll talk to somebody for like an hour and 15, and I'm like, and Alicia, I see your comment. I'm not a Magic fan, but I'm a Penny Hardaway fan from back in the day. But sometimes like you see a patient for an hour plus, and then you're like, I don't know if this patient has, bipolar 2, or if they have ADHD, or maybe there's a personality disorder in there, or like you can think to yourself, I know that they're depressed, but I don't know if they have bipolar depression. Like, is there a history of mania? Like, I don't have a lot of collateral information. So like you do the best that you can, and sometimes it does take more than one appointment. So I think it's important for me to like, if I could find a nice or funny way to portray that in the videos, that'd be helpful, because sometimes people might think like, okay, I'm going to go book this appointment, and after like 45-50 minutes I know everything that's wrong with me. And sometimes it's not like that. And I would rather you have like a provider or a psychiatrist who takes like 2 or 3 sessions, and they're like, you know what, I'm comfortable diagnosing you with this condition now, because I've really gotten to know you. I've got to like hear from people that know you, or however they diagnose you. I would also want that for my family, right? I would want somebody who like really, really, really wants to take their time with me, right? Especially for family. Like, I don't want them going to a doctor who's like, and this happens quite often in the US. You go to a clinician, right? You go for like 5 or 10 minutes, maybe 15. They hand you a questionnaire. You like, fill out a couple of things real quick, and then you come out with a prescription for Zoloft, and they say you're depressed, right? How do you know somebody has major depressive disorder in 10 minutes? What? You feel me? Like, but I hear these stories all the time. Like, these are stories that I hear. I would rather somebody take their time with me and say, you know what, Coach, I'm not sure, but let's come back, let's work this through, as opposed to them being like, yeah, Yeah, I think you're depressed and take this medication and have a good day. And I got to see the next patient, right? You feel like you're being rushed. So I'd rather have somebody who takes their time with me as opposed to somebody who's just trying to rush it. But really good question. Really good question. Oh boy, 45 minutes. What time? 4:37. Oh shoot. All right, I gotta go check a couple of emails before I can shut down for the weekend. Normally I don't work on Fridays, but it's a busy day. So I gotta head out. But thank you so much for coming on to this live. I'm gonna do more of these sessions where it's just ask Dr. Kojo, right? So we have the breakfast with Dr. Kojo, then we have the late down with Dr. Kojo, and some days I'm just gonna throw in the ask Dr. Kojo, and I'm just gonna answer you all's questions and figure out new and exciting ways to provide value to y'all. And maybe I'll get moderators. Like I'm working on that, so maybe I can go faster. Or like if there's a question that you all really want to be answered, I can figure out how to do that. But I am working, on the best way to utilize this platform and provide value to you all. So we're always getting better each and every day. So I gotta head out, but I love y'all. Have a fantastic weekend. I really appreciate your attention. Thank you so much. When you all choose to click, the follow button on my page, I want to make sure that you don't regret it and that this is your favorite, mental health channel. So thank you so much. Y'all have a fantastic weekend. Y'all stay safe, and I will see y'all back around on Monday. Peace. Take care.